The RMS Lusitania is one of the most famous technical dives in the world. It's famous for two reasons. The first being that the sinking in 1915, with the loss of approximately 1,200 lives, made a significant contribution to the eventual entry of the United States into the First World War on the side of the Allies. It was also an important milestone in the development of open water technical diving. The famous American diver Gary Gentile, who led a lot of the initial dives on the Andrea Doria, described Lusitania in the 1980s as an impossible dive. It was therefore an incredible achievement when in 1994 the Starship Enterprise technical diving team, led by Polly Tapson, made the first dives on Lusitania. By doing so, they paved the way for a generation of divers to continue to go deeper and longer and explore the many shipwrecks that became available. Although 90 metres is not particularly deep by modern standards, what makes the Lusitania particularly challenging is the fact that it's a massive wreck covered in all sorts of nets and other bits of debris from local fishing, but also it's in an area of really poor visibility, so even 3 to 4 metres is considered good. The other thing that makes it really challenging are the tides and the strong currents that sweep over the wreck, so you absolutely have to dive it on slack. I'm really fortunate in that I've managed to get 10 dives on the Lusitania, spread over 2 trips, and this is dive number 8, so it's on my second trip, and here I am with my buddy Fran. We're sat on the boat waiting for the signal to go in. You can see me looking at the shot line over there. Now, one of the things with this kind of diving is that gear we're carrying is really heavy, so all we're doing now is just praying that we're going to get in the water as quickly as possible. Fran's in front of me. She's a brilliant diver. I love diving with her, and in fact every single one of my Lusitania dives has been with her. This bit of the dive seems to take ages. We're stood here in, I don't know, 50, 60, probably more kilos of equipment. Anybody who's American, you're going to need to stick that into Google to convert it into pounds, I'm afraid. But what I can say is it feels like a lot of gear, and we're just praying for the moment when we're going to be in the water and all that weight's going to come off us. There we go. We've had the signal from the dive team. Off we go in the water. There's the shot line, and give a quick signal to the boat to tell them that we're okay. And even though it's slack, there's always a little bit of current running on the Lusitania. So the next challenge is to get on the shot as quickly as possible. Obviously, the skipper's dropped us up tight of it. So hopefully we're just going to move onto it and then grab hold of it, and we'll start our descent. One of the nice things about diving with Fran is that we work really well as a buddy team. It's never much of a challenge, sticking together. We seem to be kind of alert to what each other is doing, and that just makes this kind of thing really easy, especially on a dive like the Lusitania, which is so challenging. There she is, she's on the shot line, I'm on the shot line, just checking she's okay. For those people who are wondering what's in the bag, is a couple of video lights that she's carrying to illuminate things. She's given me the okay signal. I've asked her to spin around there, so I'm just having a quick check of her, make sure there's no bubbles. I can't see any bubbles coming up, so that's good. What I'm also doing is just checking that her video camera is working. Like me, she's got one mounted on her mask strap. For those who recognise these things, that's a Paralens dive camera. I've got exactly the same thing. Unfortunately, they're great cameras, but this video was taken a few years ago, and they're both now dead. So I've moved on to the Vaquita, similar sort of thing. She's checking me now, so she's making sure there's no bubbles coming out of any of my gear. If there was, she would tell me, and we would sort it out. But we're doing this in the descent. She's told me I'm all okay, so that's great, and it's time to head down. You can see in the bottom right hand corner of my screen, you can see the depth. It's a really nice feature about the Paralens actually, is that it does record the depth and the water temperature. So 14 degrees. This is Southern Ireland. This is, for those of you who know your geography, this is near a place called Kinsale. Famously, the Lusitania was torpedoed within sight of the Old Head of Kinsale. There was actually people who were having a picnic who watched it being torpedoed, which must have been an incredible but also horrendous thing to see. Those of you who've watched any of my other videos will know what's coming next. So as we descend down, the first item on the agenda is going to be to attach our tags to the lazy shot. The main shot line, which is the one that takes the divers down to the wreck, is the one that's kind of in the middle of the screen. The one on the right hand side is the lazy shot. That's what we're going to do our decompression on at the end of the dive. The last diver will release the big clip that you can see in front of me. All the other divers will be above them, and therefore we'll just stay with the lazy shot as it drifts in the tide. That makes it much more pleasant than trying to hang on. That thing that I've just clipped on is my tag. So each diver puts a tag on, as you've seen, and then when the last tag is removed, that diver knows that all the divers are on the lazy shot, and therefore they can release it. I'm just having a quick look up there. There's Fran. Just like to obviously confirm that she's with me, and you can see me there glancing at my that was my handset. That's a rebreather handset on the left hand arm, and on the right hand arm I've got a standalone shearwater dive computer set in closed circuit mode, so that gives me a bit of redundancy there. But yeah, no, I like to check that Fran's with me. We are diving as a team on this dive. Our bailout plan relies on us having each other's gas, and also on this dive we've decided that we're going to go and explore the boiler room, and therefore we're going to be diving as a pair in there. We're going to be in an overhead environment at 80 odd meters, and obviously trying to get out of that would be really challenging without the other person's without two sets of gas. So it's really important that we stick together. We like to do that anyway. As I'm going down, you can see the water temperature has dropped from 14 to 11 degrees C. It's going to get a bit chillier, I think, by the time I get to the bottom, and that's kind of normal. Reality, of course, is that you want to be warm when you're decompressing, so knowing that there's warm water above us for our decompression stops is really nice. The other thing you can see there is the strobes in front of me. Now what you can also see is I'm having a bit of a problem. I've got my strobes connected onto my torch, and they appear to have wrapped themselves around my dive cylinder somehow there. You can see me trying to pull it out. They're on my right hand bailout, and clearly it's there's a bit of bungee cord caught around something or something like that. So if you've got a problem underwater, the great thing about having a buddy is that he can come over and sort it out. So you can see there, I've told Fran that I'm having a problem with my strobes. She can see exactly what the problem is. She can come over, and there you go. She's fixed it almost immediately. Absolutely brilliant. Lots of people technical dive by themselves, which is fine. I do on occasion, but what you do is you lose the ability for people to solve small problems really quickly, and sometimes they're not there for big problems either. So you can see we've arrived at the strobes now. There's divers in the water ahead of us. They've got their strobes on already. I've got a bit of bungee cord there with my strobe on. You can see I've turned it on already. It's flashing. I've put it on there, and Fran's just put hers just on top of mine. There you go. You can see I've already got decompression. I've got 9 minutes TTS. Oh, now this is a really interesting thing about this dive. So you can see there's a fishing line, a fishing net stretched across it. It's really dangerous. It's a horrible monofilament net. It's also brand new. So on this trip, the shot line gets left in overnight. So we use the same shot line on every day. And this fishing net has been in since yesterday's dive and has just drifted into our shot line and obviously got connected there. So that's really nasty, really dangerous. It is quite thin and therefore would be easy for somebody to get caught in. One of the really nice things about this dive is one of the other divers who's coming down behind us, a guy called Colin, actually didn't do a dive. He spent his entire dive cutting that net off, which is fantastic. But here we are, we're arriving at the wreck. Now this looks like a hull, but it isn't. This is actually the deck, which is incredible. But everything has slid off the deck and slid down to the bottom. There's the shot line. That's it has been tied in, but that's kind of broken. They've put another waster in, a bit of a bigger waster. Now what I'm pointing to Fran here is on yesterday's dive, we recce'd the bit where we were going to go into the boiler room, and I'm just sort of reminding her of where it is. I don't know why I'm doing that, because Fran knows exactly where it is. She was with me yesterday. But anyway, so before we did this dive, we agreed what we were going to do, and our agreement was we obviously knew where the entrance was. We agreed that Fran would put the distance line out, and that Fran would go in ahead of me, and I would follow behind her on the distance line. So she would reel in, I would be behind her, and the reason we did that is really because Fran is she's far more sensible than I am. So I kind of was using her really to decide when a good point to turn around would be. Now, you might rightly point out that I should be able to make these decisions for myself, and you are, of course, right. I should be able to make these decisions myself. But I think when you're diving in a pair, it's really important that you ensure that decisions are ones that everybody is happy with, and therefore the great thing about doing it the way we did it is I knew, or I felt that it was more likely I would be comfortable with Fran's decision making rather than perhaps getting Fran to do something she was uncomfortable with. So anyway, that's what we decided, and as you'll see, it worked out well for us. So Fran is she's there. I think she's just off to my right hand side. You can see her torch, and we're looking for the gap in the that we spotted the day before, and we're just coming over the side of one of the decks here, and we're going to be dropping in very shortly into what is quite a big hole. The interesting thing is, although it seems like to us like quite a big hole, in the big scheme of the size of the wreck of Lusitania, it's not a big hole at all. The Lusitania is a massive, massive wreck, 30,000 tons. I mean, you see how high it stands. Stands at sort of here. It's probably 12 meters above the seabed. In other places, it stands 14, 15, 16, maybe even more meters above the seabed. It's lying on its starboard side, which is where it was torpedoed. And there's loads of mysteries surrounding the Lusitania. One of the great mysteries is over the famous second explosion. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'd really recommend you look at some of the kind of videos that talk about the sinking and what exactly happened. It is an incredible story. But in summary, what happened was the submarine that torpedoed the Lusitania only fired at a single torpedo, hit it in the starboard side, in the forward bit of kind of the boiler room, and then as it was sinking a minute or two later, there was another huge explosion, and the second huge explosion is often what is considered to actually have caused it to go down so quickly and increase the loss of life. The reason for that second explosion is really disputed. There's a suggestion that Lusitania had munitions on board. There's a suggestion that it was a coal dust explosion or a boiler explosion. Bottom line, nobody really knows, not least because the side on which the explosion occurred and the side on which the torpedo hit are the ones that are facing the seabed. But as you can see here, so you've just seen a massive boiler on my right-hand side, and we can see the line going off into the wreck. What's really unfortunate about this video is for some reason the power lens is not playing, and I'm getting this kind of weird banding, which does. There's another boiler, by the way, on my left-hand side, so we're in between boilers here. The Lusitania had 25 of these boilers. Most of them were double-ended, which meant that you could shovel coal in from both ends. But there were a couple of smaller. There was a couple that were single-ended that I think were near the front. So, taken together, these boilers produced a massive amount of power that were then through 4 turbine steam engines, which meant that it was an incredibly powerful and incredibly fast ship. And famously, the Lusitania held the blue ribboned trophy on a number of occasions. So, at the time, it was an incredibly well known, incredibly powerful ship, really luxurious and prestigious and all those kind of things. So the sinking in 1915 was a huge shock. All sorts of reasons. These kind of ships were pretty much the queens of the sea. They were thought to be nearly unsinkable. They were, the number of people who died on it, I think, made it really powerful in terms of the imagery, and that was exploited for propaganda purposes by both sides, but especially by the British side. And there was 120 odd Americans died on it as well, and that made it a huge issue in America as well. So there's loads of controversy over the sinking of the Lusitania. I'm not going to cover it all here, but if you're interested in the Lusitania, I'm sure lots of people will be. It's worth kind of reading into it and kind of getting the different opinions and those kind of things. But going back to the dive here, you can see that we're right inside one of the boiler rooms here. Fran is leading the way. You've probably seen her, tying off the line several times. And the purpose of that is to keep the line fairly taut. That makes it easy for me to follow, and will make it easy for us to get back. So, this is proper wreck penetration. This is pretty. I guess I would say high-end diving. So there we are. We're 85 meters down. We're inside the wreck of the Lusitania, inside the boiler room. And for those of you who are interested, we're moving forward. So this would be towards the scene of the explosion. There's another one of those big Scotch boilers, cylindrical shaped, and you could see the bit where coal was loaded. Those are kind of the square hatch openings, really. On the left-hand side is another boiler. You can see there's all sorts of taps and valves and all sorts of bits and pieces. Unfortunately, the quality's not great. That's partly because of that banding, I think, from the power lens, which is not performing well, but also partly because the visibility simply isn't very good in here. There's all sorts of silt and everything. And one of the things we're doing is we're being really careful not to kick anything up. So it's all about good trim, good finning technique, good body position, and being really careful about where we're going. You can see Fran in front of me. Yeah, as I say, she's a great diver. Somebody who wasn't so good would be leaving a trail of debris behind them, either banging their head on the stuff that's above us, or her finning technique bringing up the really heavy, nasty silt off the bottom. So that's another good reason to put Fran in front. But yeah, so here we go, and obviously the power lens is attached to the side of my mask. So where my head is going, that's what you're seeing, and you can see my torch is illuminating things. Fran's just found something there. She's just had a quick look at it and then put it back down. The Lusitania, as you would expect, is a no take dive. And it's one of the things I think you have to be really mindful of, really respectful of when you're doing a dive like this is the loss of life. Now, obviously, there's no bodies left on it. Human remains just don't survive for that long underwater unless they're buried. But it is a place where there was a lot of life. Oh, this is the thing that Fran was looking at. I think there's probably that's a light fitting, perhaps. There would have been an electric bulb in there. And one of the great marvels about the Lusitania was that it was, I think, fully electrified. So there was electricity throughout the ship. This boiler room would have been lit. Many ships of this era that they didn't have that luxury. So the men working down here would have been in the pitch black, or would have been lit by say paraffin lamps or those kind of things, maybe even candles. But no, I guess they down here they had electric light, which was great. It would have been a thoroughly miserable job if you think about it. Guys would come on shift and all they would do was shift coal around, and there was different jobs in for the people who worked in this area. Some of them would have greased all the machinery, so actually more probably engine room than boiler room. Look, there's a porthole, and that has fallen down probably from somewhere above, and those little square boxes on the underneath, they would have captured moisture condensation probably in there, and then they would have let the condensation out. But yeah, loads of different people. Some people their job would have been to stoke the boilers. Other people would have been to trim the the coal, so to move coal from one storage area to another. But all of the jobs would have been miserable. There you go, Fran. You probably saw she circled with her torch. I circled with my torch to respond, and that's just an indication that we're both okay. And I think we're probably not far off the point where we're going to turn round here. In fact, there we go. You can see that's us turning around. Another porthole down there. Fran, I think, got to about. We figured out we got about 40 or 50 meters into the Lusitania at this point, which is a hell of a distance when you consider exactly how deep we are. 80 odd meters, 50 meters inside a wreck. You know, that's some pretty decent penetration. I'm not a cave diver. It's not really my thing. But obviously these techniques, cave divers may feel we should have done things differently or would have done it in a different way. That's entirely their call. You know, we are pretty. Well, I'm not going to say amateurs, but we're not at the same level as guys who spend their whole lives in overhead environments. There you can see there that is a gauge. You can see the glass is still intact. I was kind of trying to turn it there to see if there was you could read anything inside it, but no doubt, you know, for the people who were working in this boiler room, that gauge would have been really important. They'd have needed to maintain the pressure. They'd have needed to make sure the steam was at the right pressure, and they'd have done that obviously through chucking coal in the boilers or whatnot. Because I've stopped to look at that gauge, Fran's caught back up with me. So I'm just letting her know there that I need to get back in front. So the last person reels a line in. If the visibility was to something bad was to happen to it, obviously that line is the only way really that we're going to get out of this wreck. So it's really important. I guess I should probably have my hand on it, and I'm sure lots of cave divers will pick me up for that. And yeah, that's probably a fair call. Reality is that the viz is pretty good in here, or when I say pretty good, it's certainly good enough to spot that nice white line. So I'm following it out here, and what you can see at the bottom there is those kind of semicircular things are probably the mounts in which the boilers were in. The boilers would only have been held in by gravity, and they've fallen out and are slipped over to the starboard side. So the entire inside of this boiler room has shifted as part of the sinking and the subsequent collapse of the wreck. And in due course, obviously, this bit of the wreck will become inaccessible as the wreck continues to deteriorate. So it may well be in a year or a few years' time that it's not possible to do what we've done here. And that's one of the reasons I think it's important for us to put this kind of video online. It may become important in the future. Somebody who knows more about boiler rooms or knows more about the Lusitania may look at this bit of video and is able to identify something that is an important piece of evidence for the sinking. I don't know. It's not my area of expertise, but we were looking. The thing we were particularly looking for in this dive were exploded boilers. So we were looking for a boiler that showed, perhaps the signs that it exploded and was maybe the cause of that, a second explosion. We didn't see anything. That's not to say there isn't one. Obviously, we didn't see all the 20 odd boilers that there are, the 25 boilers, but none of the ones that we saw showed any signs of a boiler explosion. So, that's not conclusive evidence of everything, but hopefully it's part of building a picture of what happened, and perhaps why that second explosion was caused. So I think the line's a bit above me at this point. Fran's behind me. I think she's probably telling me to get a bit of a move on. You can see I've just banged my head on something there, and that's brought a whole load of stuff down. Now Fran's actually overtook me here, so I think we're getting relatively close to the exit here. She can probably start to see the sign of some light above her, so we know where the exit is, so we're kind of getting, I guess, close to the end of our penetration. You can see there another big boiler from the left hand side. You may recognise that one from the way in. It had those two prominent valves sticking on the side of it. There's a bit more space here than there was earlier on, so we can kind of travel abreast. And we've been inside the wreck for quite a long time, and I'd be lying if I didn't say that makes you, a bit nervous. Both of us are really experienced divers, but I think having done this, we decided that we'd kind of ticked off going inside the boiler room of the Lusitania, and we didn't fancy doing it again. So it was a nice thing to do, but we both did feel nervous, and it is a scary thing. If one of us had a major equipment failure inside there and needed to bail out, could we have done that? We each had a single cylinder of deep bailouts, and then one of us had a travel gas, so a kind of gas that would have been, got us most of the way back up. And then we both had 50% mixes. One of us had a 50% mix rather for the deco. So would that have been enough gas to get out? Yeah, I think it probably would have been. But I'm very glad that I didn't have to try. I'm also really glad that we didn't have to be swapping stages over when we were in there. But these are the kind of things that cross your mind when you're doing this kind of diving. Now, as I mentioned, we're getting close to the exit. You can start to see a bit of green water up there. So there's a bit of light. Even at this depth, you do get a bit of light penetrating. So we know where the exit is. We know where that hole is that we came in. So that's quite nice. A bit more relaxed. We're obviously looking at our dive computers. We're checking what our time to surface is, how much decompression we're going to need to do, and we're making decisions about what we're going to do with the rest of the dive. Also looks as though there's some more divers there who are looks as though they're probably following us in. Hopefully we haven't kicked it up too badly for them, and they can get in and have a look. But it was one of the things we knew that we weren't the only divers who were planning on coming for a bit of a penetration. I think some of them probably maybe these guys followed us in and lined out this way. A few of the other divers lined out the other way, so instead of going forward, they went backwards. So there we are. There's another diver there, and they're gonna let us come out, and they're gonna head in and see what we've seen. You can see, I think one of the things about this dive is really eerie, isn't it? I love the kind of lighting that you get with the kind of pourvirs and the torches. It just makes it seem really atmospheric. There's Fran's giving me an okay signal. I've given her an okay signal, and we're kind of starting to head up now, back up the side of the wreck onto the decking really, and from there it will be a return to the shot line. And as people who've watched my dives know, the shot line is our way home. So it's a really important part of the dive, getting back to it. So that's why when we started our lining off, we started the line from the actual shot line rather than from a particular part of the wreck. One of the other things people may ask is, why didn't we leave cylinders? Why didn't we stage cylinders at the exit? Which is something we could have done. Because we only dive with 2 cylinders, and because we didn't want to go through really tight holes, we knew that we were going to be able to carry our cylinders in and out of the wreck, so didn't feel the need to do that. There's always a risk when you stage cylinders that you can't find them, so we decided to keep them with us. And there we are. You can see we're back up on the deck, back up on the top of the wreck. There's another diver there. They're reeled out as well. You can see them reeling back in, so they're reeling back into the shot line. Surprised we haven't been able to pick up any of the strobes yet, but I'm sure we will do pretty shortly. In fact, sorry, that's not any other diver. That is, of course, Fran. The other distance line you can see down there is one done by one of the other divers. So we're back at the shot line. You can see, it's quite high up from where we are. You can see the strobes flickering above me. There is another diver off to my right-hand side there. I've gone a bit higher up than Fran while I wait for her to unclip the reel and then start the ascent. So that's kind of our penetration dive of the Lusitania done. There's Fran. You can see her down there below me. She's sorting out the reel. I'm sitting a bit above her, just making sure she's okay before we start the ascent. But that'll be our dive done and dusted on the Lusitania. 85, 86 meters. You don't get a huge amount of time So you've got to use it wisely. Now, the other thing I'm remembering is obviously there's that net above me. What I don't know at this point is that Colin's probably removed it. So that's why it's gone, which is great. Great for Colin. Great of Colin. Slightly confuses me at this point. I don't know where it is. I was expecting it to be there, but it's not. So I mean, it's great. You don't get many dives on a trip like this. So I think on this trip we did 6. We had 10 days diving. 6 dives is actually a fantastic return. The previous year we spent 10 days trying to get on it and only got 4 dives in. So for Colin to spend one of his dives, effectively not visiting the wreck, but chopping that net out was just a really good thing to do. So here I am back at our strobes. You can see mine. It's the one with green tape on. Fran's is the one with yellow tape on. You can see other people there have written their names on. I'm going to take mine off. Fran is there. She's just next to me. She's going to. In fact, am I going to take hers off? Yep. I'm going to take hers off, and then we're going to head up. One of the things with any form of diving gloves is that they're quite thick, and therefore dexterity can be reduced, which is why took me such a while to do that and made a bit of a hash of it. But all sorted now. She's got a strobe, I've got my strobe, and then we're both heading up together. And it's great, fantastic sense of achievement, fantastic sense of accomplishment, and all we've got to do now is look forward to several hours of deco. Now, before we get to that point, I just want to show you actually a brief clip from the next video. I didn't. My paralens didn't work on dive 5 and dive 6 of this trip, which is a real pity because at the end of the next dive, this is a bit of video there. You can see Fran going into that hatch, which is right by the shot line. You probably remember that blue rope from earlier on. You probably see just in there my torch illuminating something. Now, when we got back up to the surface, we talked about what that was. What was that thing that we were looking at, that she was looking at there? And she said she couldn't reach it. So on dive 5, I said, well, I'll have a go at getting it out. So I actually managed to reach in and pull it out. And this is what I pulled out. Now, you might ask what that is, and it certainly took us a while to figure it out as well. So it wasn't until we stood it up that it really started to make sense. And it's obviously got some sort of glass thing at the bottom and a brass bit at the top. And then when we took a photo of it and had a look at the photo on the surface, you can see it says CB Gorman. Now, CB Gorman are a famous manufacturer of diving equipment from the beginning of the 20th century. So it was really fascinating. What we'd found was a piece of diving equipment, which is kind of incredible. It would have been lowered from the surface on a cable and would have had a light bulb in it and would have provided light for divers. So what we found there is probably from either the diving that was done in the 1930s in a hard suit, or possibly the stuff that John Light did on the Lusitania in the 1960s. Either way, it wasn't something that sank with the Lusitania. So incredible that we'd found a piece of the Lusitania's diving history. Anyway, if you go down there, it's probably it's still around on the wreck somewhere. I'm now getting to the end of the dive. I've skipped past several hours of decompression. On this dive we used a trapeze system, but because there was quite a lot of people on the trapeze, what we did was we put up our delayed SMBs and stayed close to the rest of the team. Just seeing me and Fran there exchanging let's go up signals. So we're going to stick together, we're going to surface together, and as you can see, conditions at the surface here far more pleasant than they were down at the bottom, which is to be expected really. And it's always a great moment when we get to surface and conditions not too bad. You can see the boat over there. That's fantastic. Knowing it's there to come and pick us up, and you see us giving us a good OK signal there. And this is the boat that I've done all our diving on the Lusitania from. It's Sea Hunter. It's based a bit further up the coast, but it comes down for the Lusitania X-Beds. Just skipped a bit now. The boat's coming up alongside us. I'm going to get myself on the back of it. It's got a lift. Lift's really important for this kind of diving. I've got that 50, 60, whatever kilos of gear on me, and I've been effectively weightless for the last 3 or so hours. I'm now going to get on that lift, and all of a sudden all that weight is going to come back on me, and it's one of those kind of real moments. It's like, oh wow, yeah, gravity's back. But it's so what I'm going to be keen as anything to do is to get up on the deck and get myself sat down so I can get rid of that weight. See the team here. There's a couple of them on the boat. Guy on the right there, that's Stu. He did a few of the paintings and stuff that you saw at the beginning. He's awesome, Stu. There's not many people who know more about the Lusitania than him. He comes along on all these expeds, and he talks to divers, gets our pictures and our videos, and he uses them to build up a really good picture of what the wreck looks like now. He also comes out on the boat, helps us out, and helps get all our gear off and all those kind of things. So there you go. I'm sat back down again now, which is great. I'm going to get my gear off as quickly as possible. Space is relatively tight on the boat, so I'm going to try and get out of the way as quickly as I can, because I know Fran is coming up after me. She's going to want to sit down and get all her gear off as well. So there you go. Both my cylinders are off. Which is fantastic, and then I think I'm going to stand up now and move out so that Fran, who'll be following me on the lift, can get out of the way. Just got to remove a few bits. That's my distance line on the floor. Didn't need it for the dive. Cleared my handset, got that out of the way, and there you go. I'm about, I think, to undo the clips on the front, stand up. In fact, you can see over the side of the boat there's another diver up as well. On the trapeze, which has got all those buoys and stuff off the back. Turning my rebreather off, that's what's happening there. I am going to stand up, I am going to get out of Fran's way. There you go, you can just see she's coming up on the lift. And I'm going to allow her to sit down. Loop's going over my head. Camera's probably in the way, so I need to get it past it. Yeah, there we go. And I hope you've enjoyed my Lusitania video. If you have, obviously, as always, tell your friends, tell your colleagues. Please feel free to comment, feel free to like, and obviously it'd be great if you could subscribe. And also, somebody told me you need to turn on notifications as well, so that would be excellent as well. And well, there you go. Hope you've enjoyed this video, and I will look forward to seeing you next time.